Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
Hey, it's Baxter Colburn here from Public House Media. Did you know that we just added a store here at Public House Media? No, I'm not talking about a grocery store where you can go buy apples or bananas or peanut butter, which are all fantastic, especially when peanut butter's on all of those. Anyway, we've added a store here at Public House Media so you can not only come and represent your favorite podcast network, but also represent your favorite shows as well, too. Just go over to thephmedia.com and look in the top right corner where you'll see the button that says Store. Click on that and you can search through all of our great products. Or if you go to our Facebook page, Public House Media, you can see on the left-hand side a tab that says Store. All of our products are listed there as well, too. It's the new Public House Media store. You don't want to miss it. It is fantastic. Buy some of that great swag to support your favorite shows and to support Public House Media. Check it out today.
This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good here on Public House Media. I just want to thank you for listening to the following broadcast brought to you by Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope that you'll come check out my show, How to Write Good, the writing show that is not about writing. A new show of How to Write Good comes out every Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of How to Write Good. Again, thanks for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
If they go out and wipe the floor with the Texans, I might buy in.
The insightful interviews.
Whitney McIntosh, SB Nation.
I was more impressed with John Carlo, especially when you consider Aaron Judge's all-star squad.
The hottest takes.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley had a great game against Iowa, but he hasn't done much.
Can all be found on Press Row. Here's your host.
It's clearly time for a change. It's only a matter of time before it happens.
Christian Heimel.
What's up, everybody? Welcome on Press Row. Once again, Christian Heimel here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. So happy to be with you on this Thursday, April 12th. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. Help continue to make us one of the fastest-growing sports podcasts in North America. You can always do that on Apple iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com as well. You can also check out thephmedia.com. We've got a new store. You can get some Press Row swag, a couple of T-shirts, iPhone, Samsung phone cases, coffee mugs, a couple of other fun stuff, hats there as well. So support the show that way as well. You can also get in touch with the show on social media, on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media, Twitter and Instagram, Press Row PHM, or you can email the show at pressrowphm@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter as well at Chris Heimel, ChrisHeimal. Couple of things to get to today. Of course, the NBA regular season ending last night. The playoffs are now set. Jared Greenberg, NBATV TNT, as well as the host of Out of Bounds on SiriusXM's NBA Radio channel. He will join us in a little bit to preview the NBA playoffs and give his thoughts on where some potential upsets could be if Cleveland is still the favorite in the East, and what Steph Curry's injury means to the chances of the Warriors out west. We'll also get into the debate of whether Ben Simmons is technically a rookie or not and should win the Rookie of the Year. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. Stanley Cup playoffs beginning last night, with a number of series getting underway tonight as well. Do a brief preview on that coming up, and also touch on, of course, Major League Baseball, some of the other headlines across sports, and your fan questions as always there. So really appreciate you guys being a part of the show and helping us all out continue to grow. We're going to start, though, in Major League Baseball. It's, first couple of weeks of the season are always interesting to see how teams start, how teams end, whether it's good or bad. And you kind of saw it this week was kind of really interesting. The first chance that we got to see the Red Sox and Yankees go toe-to-toe, Game 3 of that series tonight in Boston. And, the first game, obviously, with a 14-1 beatdown for the Red Sox was interesting to look at because, and I've said this about the Yankees, they've got a tremendous lineup, probably the best in baseball. They've got the best bullpen in baseball. There's no question about that. When you have guys like Betances and Robertson and Chapman there, if you can get to them, it's lights out. I mean, the game's over in the 7th inning if you can get to them with a lead. The problem has been, though, that lineup hasn't come through yet. I mean, you're looking at Giancarlo Stanton, who has struck out more in the first 11 games of the season than Joe DiMaggio did in an entire year in the 1930s during a dead ball era. So it's strange to see this happening for the Yankees, obviously with their lineup, but you got to remember this. The first 2 games that they face, they're going up against the Sox' best 2 pitchers in Chris Sale and David Price. Both of whom are healthy and completely dominant when they're on their games, and both lefties. So, I mean, you should see these teams, the Yankees at least, start to do a little bit better as the season goes on. Hitting always takes a little bit longer to catch up because it's, again, seeing the movement. It takes a while for hitters to catch up. That's why you see starting pitchers, they don't really throw that long in spring training, but you see hitters stay in the game longer because it's a different feel. So the Yankees' bats will eventually turn around. There's no reason to believe they wouldn't, but it was really kind of stunning to see them struggle through the first 2 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, their division rival, their biggest threat in the American League East, being the Boston Red Sox, jumping out and winning 9 straight. I mean, they blow a 4-0 lead on opening day on the road to the Rays, who are, by all accounts, going to be one of the worst teams in baseball this year. And then they reel off 9 consecutive wins, including multiple comeback wins and a couple of extra inning wins already. So it's more impressive, and I don't know where to really put this on. I don't know if it's the change in clubhouse culture with Alex Cora in his first year. I don't know if it's the young talent of the Red Sox that will continue and is probably a showcase for baseball. I mean, you look at how much young talent there is. Bryce Harper's off to an insanely historic start. I mean, 6 of his first 9 hits this year were home runs. Mike Trout is again playing tremendously. The Houston Astros and all their young talent is great. The Red Sox have that as well with Benintendi, Bradley, Betts, Xander Bogaerts going on the disabled list. So, and then you look at the Mets. I mean, the New York Mets have just been ridiculous. They were off to a 9-1 start as well with Mickey Callaway as their new manager. And a lot of that is because of their young pitching. I mean, Syndergaard has been tremendous. Steven Matz has been very good. Matt Harvey, though not back to his old days of 2015, Harvey is looking very solid as well. I mean, this is, and Jacob deGrom also. I mean, this is a Mets team that many people thought would just kind of hang around and battle for a wild card. But at the start, I mean, they're leading that National League East, and they're playing really, really good baseball. Guys like Cespedes, Wilmer Flores is really stepping up, which, I mean, it's just hilarious. I think 2 years ago, this guy was crying on the field because he was told he was going to be traded from the only team that he's known. You're seeing other teams, though, perform really well. Pittsburgh, which a lot of people didn't expect to do much of this year, off to a solid start. The Cubs scuffling a little bit. Same with the Dodgers. The Dodgers have been, Kenley Jansen's been atrocious over the start of the season. But again, this is what, baseball is very much like basketball. It's a marathon. It's a very long season where you can't get so caught up in the beginning. April is not a good indicator of how the season is going to go. When you put the first 2 months together, April and May, then you get an idea of how things are going to actually go down. That being said, I do believe that teams like the Mets, the Red Sox, the Astros, the Diamondbacks, those teams that are playing well right now are going to continue to play well throughout the season. Teams like the Rays, the Marlins, the San Francisco Giants, the Kansas City Royals, they're struggling right now. They're going to continue to struggle. The biggest question mark, the two biggest question marks, I think, are going to be if the Dodgers are going to continue to struggle, or if the Angels are going to continue to have this great success. Because Shohei Ohtani has been a tremendous thing to watch for, and as I told you guys, last week, I'm done second guessing Shohei Ohtani. I'm all in on this guy. I love him. He's really entertaining to watch, and I think when he does this, on both sides of the coin, as a hitter and as a pitcher, it's going to be that much more exciting. So I'm pumped to watch all of this stuff. I really do think it'll be a great season in Major League Baseball. And more importantly, you've got, as I said, the young talent, and you've got it in marketable cities where people are going to be able to watch. You've got Boston with their great young team. You've got the Yankees with so much great power in New York. You've got young guys like Mike Trout, who is the best player in baseball, and Shohei Ohtani in Los Angeles. You've got Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers in Los Angeles. You've got the defending world champions in Houston, which is still a pretty big market as well. And then, of course, you've got Bryce Harper in Washington, D.C., where so many people are going to be following him to see just how big his contract is going to be in the offseason. I mean, there's a legitimate chance he could be the first ever $400 million player. So it's something that is, I don't want to say, to be wary of, but to at least keep an eye on, because the start of the Major League Baseball season has all these storylines that we can decide whether, I mean, remember a few years ago, the Orioles were in first place the entire month of April, and they were running away with the division a few years back, and then all of a sudden by June they had fallen off the face of the planet. So it's one of those things that baseball is like that. It's very streaky. When everybody, they talk about basketball as a game of runs, and baseball is a season of runs. When one guy is struggling, everybody is struggling, like the New York Yankees. Giancarlo and Aaron Judge are really struggling. The whole team struggles. Or when one guy's hitting, everybody's hitting, like the Red Sox are right now. So it's just kind of how it works. It's a very contagious sport where certain guys are hitting well and certain guys aren't, and it just affects the rest of the entire team. So don't be surprised if you see some of these guys switch things around. I mean, the Yankees are going to go on a tear at some point. The Red Sox are going to slump. Same with the Mets. They're going to slump. The Nationals will go on a little bit of a tear because they've still got one of the best rotations in baseball. So don't be surprised at all when things start to change around a little bit. But it's going to be fun either way, and we're going to talk about it each and every week, at least some of the biggest headlines each and every week. And so we'll see exactly what happens. That being said, I did see where it was kind of, mentioned Shohei Ohtani, who's going to have his next start on Sunday against the Royals, try to go 3-0. This is a guy who, again, and this is the point that I'm making with baseball, is like nobody knows anything at this point. This is a guy who, in spring training, had like a 178 batting average and had a 27 ERA in 2 innings pitched. And then on Monday, he's got a rookie card that sells for $6,700. So it's insane to think that these guys aren't going to have a better season or a worse season. Just because it's where it is right now doesn't mean that's how it's going to be when June hits, when July hits, the All-Star break, the trade deadline. There's a lot still to be decided. Don't get caught up in the Ohtani hype as just being the biggest storyline. There are other ones to look at because Houston's playing incredibly well. Cleveland's scuffling a little bit, and the Dodgers are just a mess right now. So there's a lot going on, but that's the beauty of baseball, is that there's a lot going on. There's a lot still left to play for, obviously, with this season, and we're going to keep a track of all of that on Press Row. Coming up when we return from break, Jared Greenberg, NBATV, TNT, as well as Out of Bounds on SiriusXM NBA Radio. He's going to help us preview the playoffs in the association and a little bit of whether or not Ben Simmons should be Rookie of the Year. Will he vote for the guy who was drafted 2 seasons ago and sat out all of last year with an injury to be Rookie of the Year over Donovan Mitchell, who is truly in his rookie year? We'll find out on Press Row.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Now I feel glorious, glorious. I feel glorious, glorious. I'm feeling glorious.
Back on Press Row, Chris Heimel here with you as the NBA season ended last night, but the playoffs set to begin here this weekend, and had some fun with it over the last really week of the season. This was really kind of an exciting end to the NBA regular season. To help us break it down and preview the upcoming playoffs, Jared Greenberg. You can find him on TNT, NBATV. You can also hear him on SiriusXM NBA channel Out of Bounds with Brendan Haywood and, of course, a fellow Hofstra grad, a fellow Dempster rat. So always nice to have those guys back on the show. Jared, we appreciate the time.
You got it, Christian. Appreciate you having me on, man.
And real quick, let's kind of get into what it was on Wednesday night. The Nuggets and Timberwolves, last game of the regular season, a chance to go to the playoffs for both teams, win and get in. I believe it was only the third time in this playoff format where that actually happened for the NBA. But for these two teams, young squads, to be able to be right there on the cusp of a playoff berth in the last game of the regular season, what does it say for those two teams and for the NBA as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think it's awesome theater, great drama, right? I would say, though, for these two organizations, both internally within them and then externally, the way we viewed them, it's kind of a disappointment, to be honest, because we thought both these teams would be taking a major step forward. Both of them had huge veteran acquisitions over the summer, with Jimmy Butler being traded to the Timberwolves and Paul Millsap signing in Denver. You kind of thought with this young core and young nucleus that they have that they were ready to take that next step and not have it decided on game 82. But I think what we really learned is that, youth takes time to develop in the NBA. And even though Jimmy Butler is Minnesota's best player, and you could argue, where Paul Millsap is, probably he's not their best player anymore, and he's coming off of, some injuries. Both Millsap and Butler are also having injuries throughout the year. But ultimately, it takes a while for these young teams to develop and be good enough to compete for a playoff spot, even if they are incredibly talented, as both teams are. I think we kind of probably overestimated what they were ready to do this season in the NBA. But I think it proves that the future is very bright for both these teams. I'm going to be very curious to see how both organizations react to the fact that it took so long to the final game, the final night of the regular season, for this to be decided. You have to wonder, if there's any front office shakeups or any head coaching shakeups, which is an unfortunate part of the game. But, with all these high expectations both these organizations had, you just have to wonder if they are going to value it internally and say, what, we need to be better, and that's going to, make us or force our hand to make some significant changes.
With the end of the regular season, obviously comes a lot of awards talk and who's going to be the MVP, who's going to be Rookie of the Year, and there's a very strange debate about if Ben Simmons should qualify for Rookie of the Year, since he was drafted 2 years ago, but he sat out all of last year. Where do you stand on the idea? Is Ben Simmons a rookie, and should he be Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I think you and I probably are from the same mindset here of, we could argue this to death, but it's kind of pointless. It goes to, something that I learned pretty early on in my career, and I like to, make sure I'm cognizant of all the time. It's that, you can argue the rule of something, whether it's, a rule on the court that you don't like, or in this case, the way the NBA defines what a rookie is. But you can't argue the application of the rule, right? Like, don't get mad at a referee for calling something traveling when that's what he has been taught to call traveling. Don't be mad at awards voters for voting for Ben Simmons when Ben Simmons is on the ballot, right? Like, so I understand people getting angry about, the fact that Ben Simmons had essentially a redshirt year, but it's not the voters' fault that Ben Simmons is on the ballot, So, to be honest with you, I'm pretty torn on mine. I have until Friday to make up my mind. I think I know which way I'm leaning. But I'm not 100% sure just yet.
Well, I mean, because you do have, and I thought it was hilarious, Donovan Mitchell with a hoodie that actually explained and defined what he was.
I mean, how great is that? I mean, petty NBA at its best. I mean, this year we've hit an all-time high of petty NBA, and it's great. It's phenomenal. I love it. It's what makes the NBA so incredibly popular. I mean, Christian, you look at it, this year, the NBA has reached an all-time high, and I don't think we're even close to hitting the ceiling yet with its popularity. And it's stuff like this. Like, the games are great. The on-court product is great. But the theater, the drama, off the court is almost equally as good.
Is it the best soap opera in sports, the NBA?
Yes. Yes. I mean, think about it. Any guy or woman who is just so into sports that they don't pay attention to anything else in the world, and they don't understand why people are into reality TV or into all these, what some may call trashy TV shows. We have our own reality TV. We have our own kind of trashy dramas, on the side, which is all fun and games. And, I don't think people are taking it too seriously, but it's cool, If somebody likes Big Brother or American Idol or the Kardashians, I mean, we have our own version of that in the NBA night in and night out.
We're speaking with Jared Greenberg, a host of SiriusXM NBA channel's Out of Bounds. You can also find him on NBA TV and TNT this coming playoffs. We talked at the start of the season, and it was pretty much, for a lot of people, the consensus that it was going to be Warriors, Cavaliers in the finals. What happened to Cleveland this year, and is there still are they still the favorite in the East despite where they're going to be seated?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All of the twists and turns, talk about drama. I mean, there's been no more place that's had more drama than Cleveland this year. Just look at the roster turnover, and it's amazing. When we talked before the season, some were wondering, is this the greatest complement of players around LeBron in his history? And clearly the answer was no, it wasn't. And now, trade deadline, they ship out 6 players, they bring in 4, and it was more addition by subtraction because it wasn't so much about the players they brought in as much as it was getting rid of, about 4 or 5 of those guys that they got rid of on trade deadline day. But here's what I say about LeBron is you can quantify it and try and put it in its proper perspective by saying, holy cow, look at the numbers he's putting up in his 15th season, 33 years old, and all the miles he's put on by going to 7 straight finals. But I would say pump the brakes on that for a second because that's taking away from how special it is. LeBron James is having a season that if you were in your 5th year and you were 24 years old or you were 30 years old, it would be impressive. The numbers he's putting up are ridiculous. With that said, I don't know if that's ultimately going to end up costing him in the playoffs. Part of the formula that's made LeBron so special, especially the previous 3 years, the second stint in Cleveland, is that he's been able to pace himself throughout the regular season because he's had Kyrie Irving, because he's had a healthy Kevin Love, because he's had a supporting cast to learn their roles and learn how to fit in around LeBron, that it led him to have historic playoff runs the previous 3 years. I mean, even though he's only won 1 final, and I say only, but only 1 of the last 3 finals, the numbers he's put up against the Warriors in each of the last 3 finals have been historic. And the reason for it is because he hasn't had to go pedal to the metal in the 82-game regular season. This year, for the first time in his career, he's going to play 82 regular season games, which is incredible for anybody, let alone somebody in their 15th year, 33 years old, putting up the numbers he's putting up. So I wonder how it's going to affect him in the playoffs. With that said, he's still LeBron freaking James, clearly has a mental edge over the Raptors and a physical edge over every other team. So do I still think they're the favorite? Yeah, I do, because until you get me somebody who can stop LeBron, then I'm not so sure anybody has a chance to get out of the East.
On the flip side, the Rockets ran away with the Western Conference in the second half of the season. Are they the runaway favorites in the Western Conference, or does Golden State, once healthy, I mean, and that's the biggest thing. Yeah. I mean, if Steph Curry's able to come back when he comes back, is Houston still a runaway favorite?
No, I mean, I don't think they are. One of the things that I'm sure we talked about before the season, something I've been watching closely throughout the course of the year, is that Houston has their own demons to get over before they even get the opportunity to face the Warriors, right? James Harden has had some miserable playoff appearances the last couple of years. Chris Paul has never gotten out of the second round, and we can argue the why as to why it's happened for Chris Paul and James Harden that way, but the fact of the matter is that's what has happened. So they need to prove, and the only way they face the Warriors is if they get to the Western Conference Finals, they need to prove that they can get there first, right? And then, oh, by the way, once you get there, once Chris Paul gets to a level he has never been before, here maybe is one of the greatest rosters that's ever been assembled, and you're thinking by that point Steph Curry's knee should be fine and he should be healthy and ready to go. So I think the experience factor of the Warriors, they have earned the right with their last 3 years and their dominance to say, okay, we're not going to take the regular season as seriously. And just look at their record, right? Like, it's not that bad. It's just not as good as 67 wins, which they won each of the last 3 years, including a 73-win season, which has never been accomplished before in the history of the game. So the Warriors have earned the right to kind of say, we'll flip the switch once the playoff comes. And the Rockets haven't earned that, which is why they've gone pedal to the metal the full regular season. And they looked incredibly impressive. And I think the Rockets have the formula to beat the Warriors, but they got to get there first.
Jared Greenberg, SiriusXM NBA host at Out of Bounds, as well as NBATV and TNT, joining us here on Press Row, previewing the NBA playoffs. This is going to be a weird question for me to ask, but more likely scenario: Philadelphia Sixers make the Eastern Conference Finals, Boston Celtics lose in the first round.
I would say more likely that the Sixers would make the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that it's weird, right, with the Celtics because they've lost so much this year, and Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge have said, I've never experienced anything like this. And think about how many years of basketball those two guys have had, and I think they're spot on. I mean, 5 minutes into their season, they lost the guy who could have been their second best player this year in Gordon Hayward, and they still challenged for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference up until the last week of the season, right? I mean, think about how incredible that is. They're not going to have Kyrie. We don't know when Marcus Smart's coming back, and don't underestimate what he means to this team. I don't know that Marcus Smart goes to another team and is as impactful, but what he does for this team is really important. And then, you never know. It's a wild card with young players in their first couple of years, what you're going to get out of them in the playoffs. History has proven that young players need to gain that experience of the playoffs before they can become impactful. But the way Jaylen Brown and the way Jason Tatum have played this year, they look wise, well beyond their years. They're playing great basketball. And I would say this. Let's put into perspective, too. The Celtics have done really well without some of their great players, and I understand the playoffs is a different animal, but they're still playing teams from that 6, 7, 8 range who have just been, not been playing great basketball all throughout the year. They've been very inconsistent. They have their own injury issues as well. So those teams are in the position they're in for a reason, and I would still give the leg up to the Celtics. Now, I don't think that the Celtics can beat the Raptors or beat the Cavs with this undermanned squad. I mean, Kyrie Irving was an MVP candidate for a reason, but ultimately I think we're going to see the true genius that is Brad Stevens and one of the best 3 or 4 coaches in the NBA right now.
It seems as though with the Eastern Conference, I mean, Toronto, everybody has question marks. Obviously, the Celtics with injuries. The Sixers, this is the first time that they've really been here with this process. And then the Cavs sitting there as a potentially a 4 seed. When you look at this top 4 in the Eastern Conference, I mean, you mentioned you think the Cavs are still the favorites, but how much should people buy in for either the Raptors or the Sixers?
Listen, I'm all in on the Raptors. I think it's a lazy argument just to say, well, the Raptors have let us down in the past. I mean, let's put that in perspective here. What fan of what franchise wouldn't sign up for going to the Eastern Conference Finals, 2 years ago? What team wouldn't? What franchise wouldn't? Sign up to consistently be the top 3 in the East and be a team that's going to the NBA playoffs and make a couple of appearances in the second round. I mean, listen, I get that we want more from our teams, and there certainly have been times that DeRozan and Lowry, mostly due to injury in the playoffs, haven't performed really well when it's counted most. But ultimately, they've gone up against LeBron James the last 2 years. That's why they've lost, right? Like, I get that Lowry and DeRozan weren't great last year. Lowry hurt. But still, it's LeBron freaking James that's been the one that's bounced them. It hasn't been some, team out of nowhere that would force them to eliminate the Raptors. So I also think that if you haven't watched the Raptors, you should this year. They're really fun to watch. They've gotten away from that isolation basketball, and hopefully, the thought is that they don't go back to that during the postseason, that they continue with the ball movement, with the three-point shooting. And with DeRozan, it's not so much his three-point shooting, which he's done at a rate we've never seen him do before, but it's mostly about him handling the ball and realizing I don't have to take difficult contested shots every trip down the floor. I can still get to the free throw line, but more importantly, I can get these shooters that the coaching staff has put around me, get them really good looks. And I think that's why the Raptors, they're counting on a lot of young players, a lot of unproven talent, guys who have never been on the stage before. They're counting on them to have a big impact, which, again, as I said before with a bunch of other teams, is a wild card in the playoffs. You don't know how those young players are going to respond when the lights get really bright. In terms of the Sixers, I think it's the same. Listen, they brought in some really good veteran talent. They have important players who are veterans, but ultimately it comes down to, is Embiid healthy? Can he be an impact? And how is Simmons ready to make an impact at this level? And then you look at other young guys like Saric. Is Fultz going to do it? What's Covington going to do? Some of these young guys for the Sixers, they are way more important to their success than those veterans. And so, again, it's just a wild card with these young guys. And I would say I'm just impressed the Sixers made the playoffs. I'm incredibly impressed they won 50 games. I wouldn't count on much more than that from them because I think they've taken the proper step for them to set themselves up next year to be a team that challenges, to win the Eastern Conference, to win the number one seed in the regular season. But that's next year. This year, enjoy the fact that they're in the playoffs and they've been so fun to watch.
Is there a team in the Western Conference that could maybe surprise us and get into the conference finals, or is this just destined to be Houston Golden State?
Well, I think that Oklahoma City has the talent. I thought before the year, I thought they would have the second best record in the regular season, and they would get the number 2 seed behind the Warriors. Obviously, very wrong about that. But the way they played this year is just inconsistent. I've been very disappointed by how Oklahoma City has approached games, how they have yet to, even at this point, identify a formula that is easily transferable to the playoffs. Because in the playoffs, it's not just about winning and losing. It's how you win and lose and figuring out what works, every other day against an opponent who you have to beat 4 times over the span of the 7-game series. So, I'm very cautious about the Thunder because of how they've gotten to this point. But I would say they do have the talent to be right up there with the Rockets and the Warriors. The Blazers are interesting. They're dealing with some injury issues of their own, but they have limped into the playoffs really struggling. But again, with how dynamic Lillard and McCollum are, they're a team that's buckled down and played great defense this year. They could certainly throw a wrench in the system, but ultimately I'd be stunned. I'd be really stunned if it wasn't the Rockets and Warriors in the Western Conference Finals.
You can find him this playoff series to be determined on NBA TV and TNT. You can also check him out on SiriusXM's NBA Radio channel, Out of Bounds. He's Jared Greenberg. Jared, we appreciate the time. Thanks a lot.
You got it, Christian, anytime, man. Enjoy the playoffs.
All right, Jared Greenberg, NBA TV and SiriusXM NBA Radio, joining us here on Press Row. Playoffs starting this weekend. Look, it's going to be a lot of fun. He's right. It's a sports fan soap opera is the NBA, and this is the conclusion of it coming up here. We've got a lot of fun stuff going on, and I'm a little surprised what he thought about the Sixers. I would have thought, maybe... surprised they won 50 games, but this is a team that has dominated down the last 3 weeks of the season, and it hasn't been the best talent, but they've been playing tremendously well, better than almost anybody. And, of course, the real question, becomes, is Steph Curry healthy? When is he healthy? And that'll dictate how far the Golden State Warriors go. But it ultimately will end up becoming Houston Golden State in the Western Conference. And then, like he said, it's LeBron James. And I know so many people just hate on LeBron James because he's not Michael Jordan, but I'll tell you right now, he is the best player in the world. He is the most valuable player every single year. It does not matter. And until someone can actually handle LeBron James, Cleveland will always be the favorite no matter where they're seated. So be a lot of fun with the NBA playoffs coming up here this weekend. We hope you guys enjoy it as well. Still plenty to get to when we return. We'll touch on the NHL playoffs, which started last night. Some possible upsets in the making in the first round. Of course, Major League Baseball with its first couple of weeks here almost set to be concluded the first few weeks of the baseball season, and your listener questions as well. It's all coming up right here on Press Row.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media. Or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Tonight, Christian Heimel here with you on Press Row. Big thanks to Jared Greenberg again for joining us here this week to preview the NBA playoffs. NHL getting underway last night, and you've got some interesting matchups here with the format. It's not the new format. It's been this way for a few years, and I know a lot of people have been upset about it. If you check out the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast, which is another one here on Public House Media. Jeff Childs, Max Wolpoff on the Wednesday edition yesterday broke it down a little bit more. It's no longer that 1 through 8 seeding. It's kind of, it's now 4 quadrants where the top team, for instance, in the Eastern Conference, the Tampa Bay Lightning get the last team in, which would be the New Jersey Devils, but it's not a true 1-8 anymore. It's 2-7, 3-6, 4-5 kind of matchup. It's kind of broken up into super divisions, basically. So that being said, it does make for some enticing matchups. I mean, you look at, for instance, 2 original 6 teams that really don't like each other, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs, which will begin tonight. The Bruins with that number 2 team in the Atlantic Division. And it's always fun. These guys, of course, meeting in the playoffs in 2013, which was an insane, overtime Game 7. A lot of fun in 2013 for that Stanley Cup. The last time these two squads met in the playoffs. But Boston has done so much this year to improve themselves, to be able to, really kind of be that dominant team again after so many years where they struggled over the last couple of seasons, and they've just found a way to actually come through, made some big trades at the deadline, and actually become one of the favorites heading into the playoffs. You look at another matchup in the Eastern Conference, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Philadelphia Flyers, the battle for Pennsylvania, which will be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, you've got the 2-time defending champions in the Penguins, of course, going up against guys like Claude Giroux in Philadelphia, who have just been tremendous for this squad. And then out west, you've got the best story, I think, in sports over the last year, as I've told you guys many, many times, the Vegas Golden Knights, the team that from an expansion squad to a Pacific Division championship to, potentially, a Western Conference finals appearance, maybe even a Stanley Cup final appearance. So who knows? But and then you've got other teams, smaller markets like Winnipeg and Colorado. They may not be small markets to them, but on a broad scape of things, same thing with guys like Minnesota. The Wild and the Wild are going to struggle, of course, with the fact that they don't have Ryan Suter, their defenseman, one of their best players possible, but they do get Eric Stahl, who has been so great this year for them with 42 goals. The interesting thing that I note about these playoffs is, when you look at it and trying to pick it, and listen, I love watching hockey. I grew up a New Jersey Devils fan, so the fact that the Devils are in this, playoffs when they weren't supposed to be, with Nico Hischier, Taylor Hall, who's an MVP candidate, a Hart Trophy candidate, and Corey Schneider's played tremendous. Keith Kincaid's been good at backup for the Devils as well. But when you look at teams like Tampa Bay, who have just gone absolutely nuts in terms of what they did with Steven Stamkos and how they improved their squad as well. Nikita Kucherov is a Hart Trophy potential. Ryan, when they got Ryan McDonough, that was incredible for them as well. So it's insane to think that this is a series. What's my point being here, that with all of these series, it's interesting to look at the regular season matchups. Like, for instance, the Lightning might be the favorite in this series, but they haven't beat the Devils yet this year. New Jersey won a shootout 5-4 in October, then won 4-3 in Tampa, and then won 2-1 in March at home. So the Devils have the Lightning's number, so to speak, and even though Tampa Bay has home ice in this series, you never know how it's going to affect things. But when you look at some of these series, again, like I said, Devils have beaten Tampa Bay in all 3 matchups this regular season. The Maple Leafs won the season series 3-1 over Boston. You look at the Capitals. Capitals and Pittsburgh might be the only 2 locks in the first round in the Eastern Conference. And then out west, the Predators will probably destroy the Avalanche because they are the best team out there. They won all 4 games against them. Pekka Rinne is one of the best, if not the best, goaltender currently in the game. And it's just, that atmosphere is so much fun. Winnipeg, as we already talked about, the Wild will struggle without their best defenseman, Ryan Suter, and then Vegas, Vegas and Los Angeles actually split their season series, and Anze Kopitar, who's a potential Hart Trophy finalist for the Kings as well. But, I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury has played his best season possible with Vegas, and then William Karlsson has been tremendous for them. I love the Golden Knights in this series and in these playoffs. I'm going to be rooting hard for them as well. And then you look at a team like San Jose and Anaheim, the team that might, the freeway series, so to speak, the team that might be considered an underdog actually won more games in the regular season. San Jose 3-0-1 against Anaheim. So, I mean, again, Max and Jeff, like I said, on the cheap seats on Wednesday, broke it down a heck of a lot better than I could possibly for you guys. But I do see a potential for a couple of upsets here. I think San Jose, quote-unquote, would be an upset in the first round. The Maple Leafs over the Bruins in the first round would be an upset, I guess. And I mean, I do buy into the confidence level of when you beat a team in the regular season as much as a team like the Devils have over Tampa Bay. So, and that might just be my fandom coming out. I do think the Lightning ultimately win the series, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Devils come away with like a 6 or a 7 game series victory there. But should be a lot of fun. Listen, whether you like hockey or not, you cannot deny that the playoffs in the NHL are the best postseason. It's the best postseason there is. From the caliber of play up and down the board, 1 through 16 of all these teams that are actually in it on both sides are talented. Number one. Number two, the atmosphere at all of these home arenas is completely different and insane to think of. I mean, look at how great it was in Nashville last year. How amazing it's been in Pittsburgh for the entirety there. When Boston is on point, that Bruins, the Garden in Boston gets rocking. Vegas has been so much fun to watch this year, and it's Las Vegas and hockey. It's in the middle of the desert, and hockey is the biggest attraction in that city right now. So it's great to see all of that. It's really exciting to watch. I love watching the hockey NHL playoffs, even when my team isn't in. The Devils are for the first time in 6 years. So I'm going to be watching a whole bunch of these. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it's going to be really exciting to see where some of these upsets might actually take place. You're on Press Row. Christian Imler here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. You can also check us out on Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Apple Podcasts, of course, Stitcher.com, and the PH Media as well. Going to give a quick little, comment on the whole UFC thing. I mentioned it. You check out our Facebook page, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. You'll see a video we did last Friday reacting to the whole Conor McGregor thing. And I'm not going to mention Conor McGregor. What I am going to mention is Nick Diaz and his possible return to the octagon. He accepted a 1-year suspension that was retroactive to last April. So, but he hasn't fought in 2 years. So Nick Diaz, the brother of obviously Nate, who had some tremendous fights with Conor McGregor, hasn't fought since January 2015. Accepted a 1-year suspension from USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency, earlier this week for missing 3 out-of-competition drug tests within a year. He accepted his 1-year ban retroactive to April 19th of 2017. So next week, basically, he becomes eligible to fight again. The question is whether or not he will. The Diaz brothers have been they've been most popular simply because they speak the minds of what the fans say. The fans have really Dana White has fallen out of favor with fans because he makes pay-per-view events that he thinks fans will buy as opposed to actually good fights, with big names as opposed to big fighters, or best fighters, I should say. And Nick Diaz kind of voiced that. He said that the UFC was one of those dog and pony show type organizations where they want the fighters that have the name brand to be able to sell more pay-per-views to fight. They don't want guys rough around the edges like the Diaz brothers to actually be there. So I would love to see him fight again, but it's been 2 years. It's been 3 years. 3 years since he fought. So I don't know if I really expect him to. He did basically announce a retirement at one point. But we'll see what happens. It'd be great to see him return. I don't want to see him fight Conor. I really do not want to see any of that. I don't want to see Conor fighting in the UFC again, but I made those comments clear. I would love to see Diaz maybe go after, GSP again, Robbie Lawler possibly. Who knows? Maybe see him take on Khabib. It'd be, depending on the weight class that he comes back at, it could be interesting to see what happens. But all I know is that I don't think he wants to fight again. Otherwise, he would have, before the ban happened, he wouldn't have missed any of the drug tests. So we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, with Conor McGregor, you guys know my thoughts. I mean, he basically acted like a child, a toddler, and he's not going to get punished for it because Dana White, as I said earlier, knows that he is the name that will get him the best pay-per-view buy, even though Dana said that he's not going to get any help he's not going to give any help to Conor McGregor for his legal troubles or whatever it is. But you know what? If Dana was really going to say he's not going to get my help at all, he should just kick him out of the UFC personally. So that's just my thought. Even though I love him as a fighter and I understand that he draws the most amount of money, Conor McGregor should never be allowed to fight in the UFC again. That's just my opinion. It's just what I think what I think should happen, although I think everybody in the world knows that once Conor McGregor is done dealing with legal issues, when he says jump, Dana White will say how high. And that is the unfortunate spot that the UFC is in right now, and he will get to fight Khabib for the title. So who knows what happens there, but it's a little bit frustrating. And again, check out our Facebook page, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. Wade Groot of Ming Magazine joined us on Friday to discuss all the hoopla surrounding Conor McGregor and the former lightweight champion. So when we return, we'll touch your guys' listener questions as well as a little bit of NFL news. The draft is just 2 weeks away, and there are a lot of conversations going on about what should happen at number 1, number 2. There's even some rumors now of what the Patriots could be doing to replace Tom Brady in a couple of years. That's all coming up here on Press Row.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Broadcasting part of the Public House Media Network. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. Don't forget you can always support this show, subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family. Find us on social media, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media on Facebook. Twitter and Instagram is at Press Row PHM. You can also find me on Twitter at Chris Heimel, ChrisHeimall. Do us a favor, head over to thephmedia.com. Check out the store there. You can get some Press Row gear, couple T-shirts, a hat, phone cases, coffee mugs, all that fun stuff. Check it out on thephmedia.com. As always, I'd like to take your fan questions here, your listener questions on social media. You can also email the show, pressrowphm@gmail.com. Will in Buffalo, Richie Incognito saying he's going to retire because of health issues, but he wants to be in the Hall of Fame. Should he be a Hall of Famer? This is interesting. I was a little surprised. I shouldn't say surprised when I saw this story coming out earlier this week. Maybe it was the way that Incognito said it. He basically said Tuesday night on Twitter that he reached out to the union to inform that he plans to retire. His intention to retire through a series of tweets and comments made to several publications on Wednesday morning told the Buffalo News, quote, I'm done, that's it. It's been a long career. My liver and kidneys are shutting down. Nothing I can't restore with some balance, but the stress is killing me. And he goes on to say, I went to a doctor's appointment the other day, and they said, listen, the stress is killing you. What are you doing? And I said, I'm just doing what I love. That's playing football. So that's why I'm done. 34 years old, spent 12 years in the league. Decent offensive lineman. Said he, again, wants to be in the Hall of Fame. But I don't know if he really deserves it. Pro Bowl each of the last 3 years when he was with the Bills, was suspended for the 2014 season, part of that whole bullying scandal when he was with Miami. He's a very solid, offensive lineman. I mean, you look at his career, and I'm just going through here on Pro Football Reference just to find him. Let's see, 12 seasons in the league, out of obviously Nebraska. He played a number of games. 2013, he only played 8 games. Missed the 2014 season. Like we said, he's been one of the better offensive lines the last 3 years. He's made it to the Pro Bowl. When he was with the Rams, and this is the part that kind of hurts some of these guys, is whether or not their team had success. I mean, Joe Thomas, who retired earlier this offseason, is going to be a Hall of Famer. He was tremendous, one of the best offensive linemen the game has ever seen, played 10,000 straight snaps or whatever it was for his for the Browns. So an absolute legend in that sense. But when you look at what Incognito did throughout his career, and it's really tough to kind of quantify an offensive lineman. A lot of Pro Bowls, which was great for him. But again, I don't know how many. One All-Pro, and that's the difference. Pro Bowl and All-Pro are completely different. He made 4 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro, and that was in 2015 when he signed with the Bills. He's going to be a fringe Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I mean, he played a lot early in his career, but with bad Rams teams, bad Miami Dolphins teams. So when you look at him, I mean, he's only 2016. He was ranked as the 97th best player in the league 2 years ago. But I don't know if he's an actual Hall of Famer. Now, what the biggest question mark is, like, for the Bills now, is like they've now lost 3 offensive linemen this offseason. He's him along with, let me see here. They also lost Eric Wood, and Cordy Glenn went to the Cincinnati Bengals. So Eric Wood retired in January due to a neck injury. Cordy Glenn was sent to Cincinnati. The Bills are really struggling, and I know they're open for more trading, but this is interesting. This kind of shakes up things in the draft as well. But to answer the question, I don't think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Just because he played on some really bad teams, and he wasn't one of those guys that you kind of sat there and go, yeah, well, they've got him. I mean, LaShawn McCoy was great for the Bills when Incognito was there, so maybe his last couple of years helped him. And I think that was the best part. His years in Buffalo helped him because a lot of people had that perception after the bullying scandal in Miami of him being kind of a hothead and not really a good person, and that kind of stuff, whether it should or not, actually does affect how people go through and vote on their Hall of Fame ballots. Same with the MVP awards or any awards like that. If someone doesn't like you personally, they're probably not going to vote for you. So I think his last 3 years in Buffalo, where he just stayed quiet, did his job well. Again, 3 straight Pro Bowls, and LaShawn McCoy had tremendous seasons running the ball. That certainly helped him. So he may get in, but he certainly won't get in his first 3 or 4 years on the ballot. Eric in Philadelphia, Jalen Brunson announced for the draft. How does this affect Villanova's chances of repeating? I said this was everything. I felt that if Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson decided to stay, that Villanova should be the preseason favorite to be the national champions again. But Jalen Brunson announcing on Wednesday that he is heading to the NBA draft, will sign with an agent. National Player of the Year, 2-time national champion, Big East Player of the Year. He will be a first-round pick. He will be playing in the NBA. Solid shooter, of course, as we know that. Can play the point guard position pretty well. He'll be a lot of fun to watch wherever he goes in the NBA. But for Villanova, I think this really hurts them because now you've got 2 of your veteran leaders, of course, him and Mikal Bridges, who announced on Tuesday that you're basically down your leadership. I mean, Villanova now, as I look at their roster and what they would have coming back, of course you've got Dante DiVincenzo, who was tremendous, but he's going to have to learn to play the point guard position now. Eric Paschall is back. Omari Spellman will be back. So those two guys will help along with DiVincenzo. But the question becomes, can DiVincenzo play that point guard position very well? And I don't truthfully know where Villanova's recruiting class ranks. All I know is that now, without Jalen Brunson, without Mikal Bridges, I think that this Villanova team, they won't be the favorite. They will be a favorite. They might be a top 10 favorite to win the national championship again, and Jay Wright has proven that it doesn't matter where they are picked preseason. They will always be there, at least competing for a championship. That is kind of how I see things working out there, but it definitely hurts Villanova's chances to repeat, most certainly, more than anything else. Let's see. Jeffrey in Queens, New York. Who has the better chance of sustaining their early season success, the Boston Red Sox or the New York Mets? Both teams off to great starts with brand new managers. If I remember correctly, I think Alex Cora and Mickey Callaway now join they're each one of 4 managers to win at least 9 games in their first 10 as a manager. So, they're playing incredibly well. Obviously, you look at what the Red Sox did this year with only getting J.D. Martinez. The Mets have just been hoping to be healthy. I think the Red Sox have the best chance of sustaining this success simply because they're going to get better. With injuries right now, they do not have Dustin Pedroia. They do not have Xander Bogaerts now, who was put on the disabled list with a chip in his heel bone. The Mets, meanwhile, they don't really have anybody that they're waiting for to come off the DL. And the question with them has always been, can they stay off of the DL? So I don't really believe they have as great a chance. Listen, they probably will still be there. They'll still have a chance. Because when you look at their lineup, when you got Cespedes, Conforto, Jay Bruce, Wilmer Flores playing well, Todd Frazier, Adrian Gonzalez, who, by the way, I completely forgot that he's now with the Mets. The biggest question with the Mets is going to be, much like the Red Sox, is going to be that middle relief. Can you get it to your closer? That is the biggest question. But Steven Matz, Noah Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom, Matt Harvey, the rotation is there for this Mets squad. The Red Sox, the back end of their rotation, I don't know how much you should trust guys like Velasquez and Eduardo Rodriguez. But Rick Porcello, David Price, Chris Sale, those are you're not going to find many better 3 there. It's just that middle relief for the Red Sox. That being said, I do think it's the Red Sox just because they've got a more seasoned team to be able to pick them up when they go through their struggles. When the Mets start to go through struggles, is it going to be, oh no, here we go again, or is there going to be someone on that team that says, hey guys, we know how to get through this, let's just keep plugging away and getting after it. So I do think that eventually you'll see the Mets fade a little bit. I still believe, I said this at the start of the season when I made my picks. The Mets, I think, are going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be a surprise wild card team for a lot of people. But they won't contend for the division title like the Red Sox will with the American League East. So both teams are playing very well. Their fan bases are great. It's a lot of fun to watch when teams in New York and Boston are doing well. But I think ultimately what ends up happening is that the Red Sox continue the success better than the Mets. That's not to say the Mets won't continue to have success. It just won't be to the same caliber of the Red Sox. As always, we appreciate your guys' questions. You can submit them to us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. Email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimel. Subscribe, rate, review, shares with your friends and family, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, Apple Podcasts. Go to thephmedia.com. Check out our store there. Support Press Row by purchasing some swag for you there as well. Last thing I want to get to, we've got a couple of weeks before the NFL draft, and don't worry, we're going to get all into it here as we get a little bit closer to the draft down there in Dallas. But I find it really interesting how many people, and this is, you get closer and closer to the draft and more rumors, more and more, basically it's misinformation. It's trying to make you think that something's going to happen when it's really not. And a lot of it comes from some of these organizations up at the top of the draft to see what kind of trade bait can they get. For instance, I as much as I think the Giants wouldn't hate getting rid of Odell Beckham if they can get 2 first-round picks. I don't think they really plan on trading him because they know the type of talent he can be. They know that they've made their offensive line better. And with Odell, they're one of the more potent offenses in the NFC. But the Cleveland Browns putting out that they don't know if they're going to take, Josh Rosen or if they're going to take Sam Darnold. I think a lot of that is for people, maybe even Saquon Barkley. I think a lot of that is people in Cleveland trying to get an idea of what kind of trade bait they can get. Who's going to decide to get a little squirrely with their pick and say, oh, we may miss out on our guy. Should we trade up and try to get him early? And that's why I thought it was interesting that there's apparently a rumor going on that the Patriots might be acquiring some draft picks to trade up and get Lamar Jackson as their quarterback, which I always thought was interesting. I mean, when they traded to get back up into the first round, you knew they were looking at doing something because the Patriots don't usually have first-round draft picks. They usually try to trade up for like that second or third pick in the second round and take someone there and make the best of it. But when they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo, you knew they needed someone to become the heir apparent to Tom Brady. I personally always felt that Baker Mayfield might be a good fit for that. He's got that kind of demeanor on the field of, I just want to punish you and bury you, which is similar to what Tom Brady has. Lamar Jackson, though, is an interesting pick because he can be that versatile, Cam Newton-style quarterback. He can be that, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, who are surprisingly mobile, and be that kind of guy. So it's always interesting to me when the Patriots do certain things like this because I wonder how much of it is misinformation to try and maybe scare a couple people into doing something that they shouldn't do. Like, for instance, the New York Jets, it's rumored that they really want Baker Mayfield, that he's not going to fall past the Jets at 6. The question then becomes, who above them? Do the Giants make a comment about how, they love Baker Mayfield, or the Browns do something like that to try to see if the Jets will jump up and maybe take somebody and make a trade for someone that maybe they don't want 100%. But it's part of the game. It's what makes leading up to the NFL draft so interesting is all the misinformation. And they always say you can't believe everything you hear or read. That is 100% the case when it comes to the NFL draft. But we'll touch on it as we get a little bit closer again. It's in 2 weeks down in Dallas. For now, we appreciate you guys being a part of the show as we do every single week. Big thanks to Jared Greenberg, NBATV and TNT, as well as the host of Out of Bounds on SiriusXM NBA Radio, previewing the NBA playoffs. Stanley Cup playoffs as well. Major League Baseball in full swing. NFL draft in a couple weeks. It's a great time to be a sports fan. We certainly hope you guys are enjoying it. And we certainly hope you continue to support the show. iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, iHeartRadio. Of course, check us out on NBATV.com. Check out our swag as well. I'm Chris Hamilton. We'll see you next week on Press Row.